Sarah and I were enjoying our weekend in Fairview, a small town in rural North Carolina. We wanted a break from the hustle and bustle of Charlotte, and Fairview seemed like the perfect place. Quiet, cozy, and with that small town charm that drew us in. On our first night, we decided to have dinner at Pine Grove Diner, a local restaurant with good reviews and a homey atmosphere. The restaurant was exactly what we hoped for. The soft lighting, polished wooden tables, and the aroma of homemade food floating in the air created a welcoming atmosphere. We were discussing what to order when a couple approached us and introduced themselves as Henry and Linda Greer. They were a bit older than us, maybe in their 50s, and had an easy, enthusiastic smile that at first seemed like nothing more than friendliness. Henry, tall with a graying mustache, told us that he and Linda were amateur photographers. They had a project in mind and wanted to know if they could take some pictures of us. Linda, a medium-height woman with light brown hair tied in a bun, added that she loved capturing authentic moments of couples with her vintage camera. Although we found the request a bit unusual, we agreed. After all, there didn't seem to be any harm in having a few photos taken. Henry began giving us gentle directions, asking us to smile and look at each other. The situation was a little odd, but we laughed and tried to enjoy it. After taking a few photos, Henry and Linda started pressuring us to go with them to an improvised studio that, according to them, was just a few minutes away. They assured us it would be quick and that the photos would turn out amazing. By this point, both Sarah and I began to feel uneasy. Their insistence was going too far. We politely declined, saying we preferred to stay where we were and enjoy our evening at the restaurant. The Greers seemed disappointed but didn't push further. Before leaving, Henry handed us a business card telling us to reach out if we changed our minds or wanted to see the photos. He gave us an enigmatic smile before walking away with Linda. As we watched them leave, Sarah commented that there was something odd about them. I agreed, but we didn't dwell on it. They were gone, and we returned to our dinner. The next day, Sarah and I decided to enjoy the morning sunshine by playing a round of mini-golf at Fairview Fun Park. The park had a nostalgic vibe, with vibrant colors and a mini golf course full of funny and entertaining obstacles. It was exactly what we needed to relax after the previous night. We were on the third hole, laughing as we tried to get the ball through a spiral tunnel, when we heard a familiar voice behind us. What a coincidence, seeing you here again. It was Henry Greer, accompanied by Linda. My stomach instantly knotted. What were they doing here? They approached us with wide smiles, as if we were old friends. We couldn't resist coming over when we saw you having fun, Linda said, picking up the camera hanging around her neck. Would you mind if we took some photos while you play? Sarah and I exchanged a quick glance. Something was definitely wrong. Not only had they found us again, but they also seemed to know things about us that they had no way of knowing. Henry mentioned the hotel where we were staying and commented on the activity reservations we had made for the following day. Details we certainly hadn't shared with them. No, thank you, I said, trying to be firm but polite. We're just looking to relax. We understand, Henry replied, but didn't back off. We just thought it would be a great opportunity to capture some authentic moments. You two have such a beautiful connection. My patience was wearing thin. I could sense that Sarah was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Even so, we tried to continue playing, ignoring them, but the Greers wouldn't leave us alone. They weren't just taking pictures, they were getting too close, invading our personal space. Linda, in particular, seemed fixated on Sarah, asking strange questions about our relationship, our families, as if she wanted to know everything about us. When Sarah took a step back, visibly disturbed, I decided that was enough. I think we're done here, I said, grabbing her hand and starting to walk in the opposite direction. Henry and Linda didn't try to stop us, but I could feel their eyes on our backs as we walked away. We left the park quickly, hearts pounding, and an unsettling feeling growing inside me. It wasn't just discomfort. It was something deeper, an instinct that something was very, very wrong with that couple. Sarah was pale and quiet, and I knew she was just as disturbed as I was. As we drove away, I glanced back one last time and my heart froze. I saw Henry and Linda standing at the entrance of the park, watching us with those sinister smiles. The lingering unease followed us back to the car. Sarah was silent, gripping my hand tightly as we pulled out of the Fairview Fun Park parking lot. I was trying to stay calm, but the feeling that we were being followed grew stronger with each passing minute. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and my heart raced. About 100 meters behind us was the same black sedan that Henry and Linda Greer had driven away in the previous night. The usual small-town scenery now seemed sinister, with every corner and street feeling like a potential ambush spot. "Try to lose them," Sarah whispered, her voice tense. I did my best, taking sharp turns, ducking into narrow streets, and cutting through short alleys. But at every turn, there they were, keeping just the right distance not to seem obvious, but close enough to let us know we weren't free. The hotel was only a few minutes away, but I knew we couldn't go straight there. We had to shake them off first. I tried a few more maneuvers, attempting to lose the sedan, but nothing worked. The Greer's car continued to tail us, like a persistent shadow. "Should we go to the police?" I asked Sarah, my eyes never leaving the road. "Maybe, but what if that makes them angry?" She was clearly frightened, and I wasn't sure what the best move was. If they already knew so much about us, what else could they do? With no other option, I decided to drive us to a small shopping center we had passed earlier. I parked the car as close to the entrance as possible, and we both ran inside, blending into the crowd. I looked back and saw the black sedan park a few meters away. Henry and Linda got out, but they didn't follow us immediately. I watched from a distance as Linda took out her phone, seeming to search for us with her eyes. Inside the mall, Sarah and I stayed hidden for a while, hoping they would give up. My nerves were on edge, and every minute felt like an eternity. Eventually, we took the risk of leaving. We sprinted to the car and drove off before they had a chance to see us. We finally made it back to the hotel. We went up to our room, exhausted and shaken. I locked the door, fastened the security chain, and took a deep breath. "I think we lost them," I said, trying to convince myself. Sarah collapsed onto the bed, relieved, but something still felt wrong. I pulled out the business card that Henry had given us the night before, and upon examining it, my mouth went dry. The card was now different. In addition to the basic information, like the Greer's names and a phone number, there was a handwritten phrase, "We know where you are." I showed it to Sarah, and the terror hit us like a wave. Somehow, they had tampered with the card, placing those words there. How? We had no answers, only a growing fear and the certainty that we needed to get out of there. The next morning, we packed our things and left Fairview as quickly as we could without looking back. But as we drove out of town, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Greers were still watching us, waiting for the right moment to reappear. I was starting to get to know Emily better. We had been seeing each other for a few weeks, and things between us were going really well. She was fun, smart, and, above all, easy to talk to. That night, we were having dinner at the Riverton Grill, a local restaurant that had become our favorite spot. Everything seemed normal until she suddenly got serious. "Jason, there's something I need to tell you," she began, staring at the glass of wine in her hands. I noticed the shift in her tone and braced myself for whatever was coming. "There's this guy, Mark. He was a classmate in college, and he's been stalking me." This took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to hear something like that, especially from someone as calm and composed as Emily. "Stalking? What do you mean?" I asked, trying to process what she was saying. She sighed and began to explain. Mark had been just an acquaintance in college, someone she had shared a few classes with. They were never close friends, but he always tried to get closer, sending messages and trying to arrange meetups that she constantly avoided. At first, it seemed harmless, just a guy trying to be friendly. But after graduation, he started showing up at the same places she did, sending strange messages and more recently, leaving unwanted gifts at her apartment door. "What kind of gifts?" I asked, trying to grasp the severity of the situation. "Flowers, stuffed animals, even a letter. But it's the tone of the messages that scares me. He says he sees me as something he needs to protect, that I shouldn't be with anyone else." She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "And he's mentioned you." My body tensed up. "Mentioned me how?" "He knows we're seeing each other," she said, looking directly at me. "In his recent messages, he started mentioning your name, saying that I'm not yours, and that you'll end up getting hurt if you keep seeing me." That put me on high alert. It was already disturbing to know that a guy was obsessed with Emily, but now he was bringing me into it, indirectly threatening me. "Have you told anyone?" "The police?" I asked, concern growing. "I thought about going to the police, but so far, he hasn't done anything physical. It's just scary. But the messages keep coming, and it feels like he won't stop." I took a deep breath, trying to think of a solution. "You should block him on all social media, change your phone number, do whatever you can to cut contact." "I've already done that," she replied, "but he always finds a way back. He creates new profiles, sends messages from different numbers." Looking into her eyes, I saw genuine fear. I knew I needed to do something, but at that moment, all I could do was promise to stand by her, and that together, we would find a way to deal with Mark. The days that followed were tense. Emily was trying to go about her life as usual, but I could see how the situation with Mark was affecting her. She was more reserved, constantly looking over her shoulder whenever we went out, and honestly, I was getting paranoid too. Things took a turn for the worse on a Friday night. We decided to have dinner at the Riverton Grill again, trying to distract ourselves and enjoy the evening. In the middle of the meal, I felt a chill run down my spine, and without meaning to, I glanced toward the entrance of the restaurant. There he was, Mark, standing across the street, staring at us through the window. Emily noticed the change in my expression and slowly turned to see what had caught my attention. When she saw him, her hand trembled and she dropped her fork. "He's there," she murmured, her voice filled with panic. I tried to stay calm to keep the situation from getting worse. "It's okay, we're inside. He can't do anything." But even to me, my words sounded hollow. His presence was like a dark shadow hanging over us. We tried to ignore him and finish our meal, but I could feel his eyes on us the whole time. When we left the restaurant, he was already gone, but the fear lingered. From there, things only got worse. Mark started showing up at places we frequented. I saw him at the gym where I work out, always at a distance, but always visible enough for me to know he was there. Emily saw him standing near the local pharmacy, watching her as she shopped. He never approached, never spoke, but his constant, silent presence was wearing us down. One day, I finally decided I had to do something. We were walking in the local park, trying to enjoy the fresh air, when I saw Mark sitting on a bench, pretending to read a book. He was watching us out of the corner of his eye. That was the last straw. I knew I had to confront him. "Stay here," I told Emily, and before she could protest, I approached Mark. He saw me coming and closed the book with a cold smile. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "Why are you following us?" Mark didn't respond immediately. He just looked at me with a calculating, serene expression that unnerved me even more. "I'm just looking after what's mine," he finally said, in a tone that mixed certainty with insanity. "Emily is not yours. She never was," I retorted, feeling my anger rise. "If you come near her again, I'm calling the police. This has to stop now." He stood up slowly, still with that disturbing smile. "You don't understand, Jason. She needs protection. You're just in the way." Before I could react, he simply walked away, disappearing among the trees in the park, leaving me there, filled with frustration and helplessness. I returned to where Emily was, and she knew by the look on my face that the confrontation hadn't resolved anything. That night, when we got back to her apartment, we found a new message from Mark. It was a photo of us in the park, taken while we were walking, without us noticing. Valentine's Day arrived, and I was determined to make it a special night for Emily, despite everything that had been going on. I decided to cook for her at my place, away from Mark's watchful eyes and the stress he was causing us. I wanted, for at least one night, for us to forget all the craziness and just enjoy each other's company. The evening started off well. Dinner was almost ready, and Emily seemed relaxed for the first time in days. We laughed, talked, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But that sense of normalcy was quickly interrupted. While I was in the kitchen, I heard a noise in the backyard. It sounded like twigs snapping underfoot. At first, I thought it might be an animal, but the paranoia of the past few weeks made me alert. I looked at Emily, who was in the living room, and she noticed the change in my expression. "What is it?" she asked, concern creeping back onto her face. "Just a minute," I replied, trying not to alarm her. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly made my way to the back door. As soon as I opened it, a chill ran down my spine. There was Mark, standing by the fence, trying to hide in the shadows. My patience and calm evaporated in that instant. I didn't know what he was planning, but I wasn't about to wait to find out. "Mark!" I shouted, and he turned, surprised that he'd been caught. I charged at him, my anger and fear merging into one single impulse. Mark tried to run, but I caught him before he could jump the fence. I grabbed him by the shirt and threw him to the ground. A struggle ensued. Mark was stronger than I expected, but the adrenaline was on my side. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting to protect Emily. We rolled on the ground a few times, exchanging blows, until I managed to pin him down, holding his arms and yelling for Emily to call the police. I could see the hatred in Mark's eyes, but there was also something else, a madness I hadn't noticed before. He wasn't just obsessed with Emily, he genuinely believed he had some kind of right over her. As we waited for the police to arrive, Mark kept muttering about how he was trying to save Emily, how I was just getting in the way. It sent a chill down my spine, but I held him tightly until the police finally arrived. Mark was taken away in handcuffs, still mumbling to himself, but his eyes never left mine. I knew that look would stay with me for a long time. Emily was on the porch, visibly shaken but relieved. Finally, it seemed like it was over. As the police took Mark away, one of the officers informed us that he would be charged with stalking and trespassing, and with any luck, we wouldn't be seeing Mark anytime soon. But even so, we knew the fear and the sense of vulnerability would stay with us for a while. That night, as I held Emily in my arms, I couldn't stop thinking about how someone could become so obsessed that they crossed all boundaries of what is acceptable. Mark had become a shadow in our lives, and now, with him finally out of the picture, all we could do was hope that the worst was truly behind us. After a messy breakup with my long-term girlfriend, I decided to reactivate my Tinder account. Maplewood wasn't exactly a bustling metropolis, but it was big enough to try meeting someone new and moving on. Spending Valentine's Day alone didn't sound appealing, so on a whim, I decided to see who else was in the same boat. That's how I found Alex. Her profile picture caught my eye immediately. Straight brown hair, piercing green eyes, and a confident smile. Our conversation flowed naturally from the start. She was smart, witty, and had a sharp sense of humor that captivated me. We agreed to meet that very night for dinner at Bistro 22, one of the few decent restaurants in town. When I saw her for the first time, I wasn't disappointed. Alex was even more beautiful in person, with an easygoing demeanor and an energy that made me feel comfortable right away. Dinner was great. We talked about everything from work to favorite movies and travel stories. It felt like we had known each other much longer than just a few hours. After dinner, the night still felt young, and neither of us was ready to say goodbye. I suggested we go back to my apartment, continue the night there with a movie and another glass of wine. Alex agreed without hesitation, and soon we were on my couch, laughing and chatting like old friends. Things started to change after a few glasses of wine. Alex, who had been lively and fun, suddenly became oddly quiet. She stared at the TV, but it seemed like she wasn't really watching the movie. Her gaze was distant, as if her mind was somewhere else. I tried to start a conversation, but her responses were short, almost robotic. I was beginning to feel uneasy, but I tried not to show it. I chalked up her behavior to tiredness, or maybe the effect of the wine. But when she abruptly stood up and went to the bathroom without saying a word, I knew something was definitely wrong. I sat there for a few minutes, waiting for her to come back. But as time passed and I didn't hear any sound from the bathroom, I started to get worried. I got up and walked over, gently knocking on the door. "Alex, are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep calm. No answer, just an unsettling silence. I tried again. "Alex, are you all right? Do you need anything?" Suddenly, I heard a loud crash, like something being knocked over, followed by a strange, almost hysterical laugh. My heart started racing. Something was very wrong. I decided to open the door. The scene I found was completely surreal. Alex was standing in the middle of the bathroom, her face twisted into an expression I had never seen before. The mirror was shattered, with shards of glass scattered across the floor. She had scratched the walls with her nails, leaving deep marks, and various bathroom items were strewn about as if they had been thrown with force. "Alex, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking. But she didn't answer. She just laughed again, a disturbing sound that seemed to echo off the walls. I tried to approach her, speaking softly, trying to calm her down. "Let's get out of here, it's okay. Let's just get out of this bathroom." But before I could get close, she turned to me, her eyes shining with an intensity that made me step back. "Don't touch me," she screamed, shoving me with such force that I nearly fell to the floor. Then, without another word, she ran out of the bathroom, past me, and out of the apartment. I stood there, not knowing what to do. What had just happened? Minutes ago, we were talking normally, and now, this. My first instinct was to go after her, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear, or the feeling that there was something much deeper and more disturbing going on with Alex than I could understand. I decided that the best thing to do was call the police. Considering the state she had left the bathroom in, I was afraid of what might happen to her, or to anyone else she might encounter along the way. I was in shock as I called the police, trying to explain what had happened. My hands were trembling, and my mind was in a whirlwind. When the officers arrived, they were quick to assess the situation. I led them to the bathroom, showing them the destruction Alex had left behind. The scene looked more like an act of deliberate violence than a momentary outburst of anger. The police asked questions about Alex, if I knew her last name, where she lived, any details that might help them find her. But in reality, I knew very little about her. Our conversations had been light, easygoing, without touching on deeper personal details. I felt stupid for not asking more questions, for not realizing that something was wrong from the beginning. After searching my apartment and the surrounding area, the police found no sign of Alex. They looked for clues, checked the building's security cameras, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. The only trace she left behind was the bloodstains in the bathroom from the cuts she had made when breaking the mirror. As the days passed, I anxiously waited for news, but nothing came up. Alex seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The strangest part was that when the police tried to trace her phone number, they discovered it was registered under a fake name. There was no concrete information about who she really was, no address, no history. It was as if she didn't exist. This void of information disturbed me deeply. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, replaying that night over and over in my mind. Every detail, every word, every strange laugh from Alex. None of it made sense. The police left the case open, but without new leads, it soon got lost in the bureaucratic routine. To them, she was just another missing person, someone who might be running from something or someone. But to me, it was much more than that. That encounter left me with an unsettling feeling, a certainty that something sinister had passed through my life, leaving an invisible mark. I tried to move on, but the memory of that night haunted me. I began to question everything. Who was Alex really? What did she want? And why did she act that way? I never got answers to those questions, and it consumed me.